Global mobility I think in a corporate setting is coordinating the movement of employees from one country to another, and it requires collaboration from many business stakeholders and external partners, including immigration, tax, relocation, global travel, and even the business themselves when it comes to managers playing an active role. So that's how I would define global mobility on its face. But of course, there's so many soft skills that go along with making this a successful function. I would say empathy, patience, clear and proactive communication with all of the various stakeholders involved, and just managing expectations. So that's really a very key part of making global mobility a success as well.
Compliance issues and things that are beyond our control. So immigration, tax, you definitely have to have the right to work in the US, and that's a challenge, of course, for mobility professionals. But what's rewarding about bringing employees into the United States is you're actually a part of that story. So that employee's story, that family story, the opportunity to expose both the employee and the family into a new environment, a new country, new school systems, and seeing that contribution to their career, if you will. It's definitely rewarding. You see a lot of successes. Some of the employees will localize and stay in the US, and you're a part of that. So it's rewarding in general just by knowing that you're supporting. You're a champion for global mobility, and you get to see it in action and see the different success stories that come out of mobility that comes into the US.
So the United States, as many of you know, is the land of opportunities. A lot of people from all over the world, including myself, dream to come here, not only because of the culture, but also because there are opportunities to study, to work, to really build a life here. And so I believe that global mobility makes it really attractive, especially for companies that want to bring new talent into the United States.
I think the United States is attractive to global mobility programs because there's a lot of great companies that are headquartered here or have a large presence here, and so a lot of revenue is generated in the United States. All things considered, there's a pretty good, education system, and I think it really goes back to the American dream for a lot of individuals. I think there's an influx of immigration into the country for good reason. And so it creates a nice opportunity for individuals or later their dependents who will be possibly growing up in the United States down the road.
I think what makes global mobility attractive in the US in particular is the various options that we do have that we are able to consider for sponsorship when it comes to foreign talent. And that helps us to have a competitive advantage as well as when we're looking to hire talent, especially with a market that is so competitive. What is attractive about it, I think, is that it is so nuanced and there's so many factors that we have to take into consideration. And while every case is different, I think the opportunity to collaborate with external immigration counsel, our ER teams, or other global mobility teams, and trying to figure out how best to structure that, and always being able to come up with a solution for the business.
I would say the greatest feedback that I can give is to be open for feedback. What I like to do at every assignee and every case that I look after is to have a very transparent and open and personal conversation with my employee. I would want to know how I can help make their move into the United States successful, and learning about their situation, learning about how many family members they have, about their current housing situation, gives me more information to advise and consult our business leadership on, hey, this is what I would recommend to make this relocation successful, and this is the reason why. And beyond that, that personal conversation with my employee is collecting their feedback so that future cases that we move to the United States, we can implement any friction, solutions to any friction that we encounter. I truly think that there's no such thing as a perfect program. There's always room for improvement. And so knowing that feedback is a gift, I would say get feedback. Find out where your program can do better and can do better, and go back to the employee that gave that feedback and say, thank you for it, and this is what we're gonna do moving forward, so that we feel that they are heard, and that you are taking constructive feedback very seriously.
My tip to other global mobility professionals would be to have a clear immigration strategy for the move to the U.S., not only in the short term, but in the long term. So understanding what does 5 years out look like from this particular point. So thinking ahead.
One of the key challenges that have been top of mind for the past several years was just having to navigate through U.S. immigration, a lot of the changes that have occurred, having to stay on top of those changes, having to determine how best to mitigate any impact to our employee population as a result of those changes, and ensuring that we're keeping our employees, our business partners, our HR partners fully updated with respect to what we're doing and how we are continuing down that path of ensuring support of employees and business continuity. I think that one of the things that makes it so attractive is the level of support that provided from a mobility perspective when coming to the US. I can think back to a previous organization that I worked for that was a very large global organization, and in speaking with my colleagues that worked in other countries and comparing of benefits and support provided from an assignment standpoint, it was arguably night and day. And night and day in the sense that the US support was just much greater.
I think it's really important to set expectations with assignees from the beginning of assignment relocate, and really partnering with the right providers in the U.S. to help ease the transition. So specifically what I've found is individuals have challenges when they come to the U.S. with getting driver's license and social security numbers, and it always takes longer than they had planned, and they have to set aside a lot of time. So preparing them in advance for the different things that they'll have to do when they get here, I think really helps to make the transition more smooth. In addition, partnering with destination service providers who can guide the assignee through that process has really proven to be valuable and has helped a lot of them to save time and frustration instead of having to go and do those things on their own. I think two of the biggest challenges with working in global mobility in the USA are tax and immigration, which is a common theme, I think, anywhere you go. But as most people know, immigration in the US has been increasingly more difficult over the last several years. And there have been a lot of times and places where we've had to really think strategically on how we can find the right visa type for individuals to come and work in the US. And then, of course, over the last year or so, we've had even more challenges with a lot of restrictions. We're hoping that, in the coming years in the new administration, immigration will start to turn in the direction where it's more supportive for relocating assignees. But that's definitely an area of challenge. In addition, tax is an area where we find a lot of challenges. Individuals coming to the U.S. aren't quite as familiar with our tax system, and that can pose some certain challenges to the individuals. Really, from an understanding perspective, there is a lot of education that goes into teaching assignees how the U.S. tax system works. I see some of the benefits of working in global mobility in the U.S. is really opportunity. I find a lot of individuals coming from all parts of the world who are really seeking just the opportunity to live and work in the U.S. There's a lot more flexibility from employment perspectives as far as at-will employment can be seen as a positive and a negative, but it really does give a lot of individuals the freedom to choose where they want to live and what they want to do. I'd say the U.S. is attractive for a lot of global mobility programs.
because the cost in a lot of locations is actually a lot lower. So when you look at potentially sending someone to, let's say, the UK versus a city in the US like Houston, the cost of an assignment in general could be a lot lower. And that's because the cost of living in a lot of US cities is certainly lower than a lot of different global locations and hubs where individuals are often sent. So I do think that's an advantage that a lot of companies can take when they do send individuals to the US. On the reverse, I do think immigration can, in some ways, be easier to get to in the US. Depending upon the visa type and the requirements, there can be opportunities not only for an individual to work in the US, but also an accompanying spouse. And I think that can make the US attractive for a lot of families if they have dual career spouses and both want to be able to work. There is that opportunity under certain visa types. So I think from a cultural perspective, the US is a very attractive location for a lot of individuals just because of the massive amount of cultural diversity. So depending upon where you go, most major cities are going to have a huge variety of different cultures. And you'll see that not only in restaurants, but in shops and certain locations and neighborhoods. So it's a way for individuals to really be exposed to a lot of different cultures, but also find individuals who are of the same culture that might help them to be able to integrate a little bit more easily into the US culture and kind of have that opportunity to connect with others and then connect with others who may be from different countries and different cultures while they're in that location.
Typically, your markets, when you think about it, US is, if not the largest market, it's usually going to be one of the largest markets for a business. So bringing in key executives, people that they're looking to promote within the organization, and to give them the opportunity to work here in a multicultural, very dynamic market, it is a great development opportunity. So thinking about how they want to build their talent pipelines, what they want to do in terms of maybe expansion, having that US experience becomes very critical for those top rising executives or for those that they're really looking to be the highest level of leadership. It also is great for building the brand, building the name, and showing the investment of the organization to have a global presence in the US. Because you're also bringing, especially for companies that may be headquartered outside the US, to have those leaders come into the US, it's also bringing the culture of the organization better to the US market. I think that you can't ask enough questions. Because the more that you ask questions of the assignee and help them to dive into maybe some of their concerns, their fears, their family dynamics, anything that's going to potentially be that risk factor of a failure, that's going to really help to also create a better relationship while hopefully helping to avoid a failed assignment. Because those questions, an assignee just doesn't know what to expect. And I think that that's one of the places where I often start, because as a former assignee myself, I knew I didn't know what to expect. Even though we moved around the world and lived in Belgium, Venezuela, Ecuador, back to Venezuela, I didn't know what to expect each time we moved. If somebody would have said to me, "What is your most important possession?" I could have named a ton of things. But after nearly losing my household goods 3 times, now it's just stuff. So, by the time I came back, I learned a different perspective, and each move is different. So listening and asking questions, finding out where they are on their journey. How many times have they moved? What's their family dynamic? Has that changed? Who do they have at home? Do they have ailing parents at home? Anything that you can find out is going to help you to be the best supporting global mobility professional to them and really enhance that employee experience.